I'd like to call to order this regular meeting of the Richmond Community Schools Board of Education at 7 o'clock. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next is our mission statement. Angela.
At Richmond Community Schools, we provide a quality education that empowers students to be successful in the global community.
Thank you. Roll call. Angela.
Sarah?
Here.
Jessica?
Here.
Kyle?
Here.
Chris?
Here.
Margaret?
Here.
Terry?
Here.
And I am present. You have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, approval of agenda. I'm looking for a motion.
I move to accept the agenda as presented.
Support. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Approval of the consent agenda.
I motion to accept the recommendation of superintendent and approve the consent agenda as presented in the attached documentation.
Support.
Okay, any discussion?
In this front of you, you should have got a revised personnel report. We had some resignations that came in at the 11th hour, if you will. We had a resignation of a tennis coach, Craig Fenwick. Melissa Wolf, our Spanish teacher for the middle school and high school, also resigned. Taylor Jones at the middle school for English Language Arts. Candace Suckerto, the secretary for the director of Student Support Services, has resigned today, effective the 23rd. And Karen Kuka also resigned. She was a preschool, child care, and Title I paraprofessional. So those positions are currently posted or will be posted probably tomorrow. In your packet, you'll see a lot of new hires. You have not seen a personnel report since June, so some of these new hires are for child care positions that also occurred over the summer, but I'll go through. We have Preston Trend, who was hired for our chemistry and social studies teacher. Amanda Turpin, I don't see her, she's a English, 6th grade English Language Arts position. Carrie Blissett is the secretary at Will L. Lee. Don't see her. Sean Misko is PE at the middle school. Dennis Rozek, excuse me if I pronounce things wrong, is child care for the summer program for Camp Richmond, which will have actually just a couple more weeks, one more week actually. Elena Hunter, 2nd grade. Emily Newman, 5th grade. Our 5th grade, if you, let me start again. Marissa McNamee, early childhood special education teacher. I don't believe she was able to attend. Janice Fella, child care and preschool aide at Lee. Beverly Baika, child care and preschool aide. Cheyenne Groy, preschool aide. A.C. Wilson was a child care personnel for the summer Camp Richmond. Madison Rich, I don't believe is here. Amanda Godardo, art teacher. Lori Simmons, we have a bus driver. And then on your sheet is to rehire Ms. Bashan. We have a administrator that will be out for several weeks, and this would provide the support needed for the building during that absence.
Welcome, everybody. We're glad to have you guys. All right, it has been moved and supported. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right, I'm looking for a motion to go into closed session.
Pursuant to Section 8B of the Michigan Open Meetings Act, I move that the Board of Education go into closed session for the purpose of a student discipline hearing for student 032519A.
Support.
Okay, moved and supported. Any discussion? Jessica?
Aye.
Kyle?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Sherry? Aye. Angela?
Aye.
Margaret?
Aye.
And I vote aye. We're going into closed session and we will be back out. All right, we're back in open session, 7:15. Next up, we have our presentations. It's the overnight football camp. Mr. Reinhardt.
Just while they're walking up, this is to just remind the board, this was an overnight camp that has happened. And so through the process of the board policy, all overnight camps need to come to the board. So because it dealt with our insurance company and so forth, the insurance company asked us to follow our normal procedures. So that's why it's there. So I'll turn it over to whoever wants to begin about what the camp was, what was the...
Well, the camp was an opportunity for us all to get together, spend some time together, learn some football, do some bonding. It was really fantastic. We would never have that opportunity to have those facilities that we had for that amount of time. And again, the meals and the lodging, the field trainer provided. It just was a great opportunity. I think we got the most out of it. And now that we've done this, a year where we do it again, obviously whatever happened with insurance, I thought personally it was going to be a standard waiver they gave to us. And then a week before camp, we kind of got this, they wanted to be added to the insurance or something. So that was new to us. I think hosting that camp in the manner they did was a little new to them also. So I'm sure it will go much smoother in a timely fashion. But the bottom line, it was just a fantastic success for the kids and a great opportunity.
The coach that was handling it on their end apologized to us. I think he gave us the insurance information 6 days before we were supposed to leave. And that was like, everybody's on vacation. We only meet, every once in a while. John and I set it up actually in May, John.
Yeah, we only had waivers signed.
Yeah, we took care of everything, but
they wanted something else that is confusing to give it to us. We did the best we
you
could.
did them as well, so
Yeah.
panic mode there.
Okay, thanks. Any questions, Stephen?
Yeah, how did it slip by? I mean, we know if we take kids overnight, it's got to be approved.
I've never taken anyone
I-
overnight, so it's new to
Okay,
me. Yeah,
then
that's
I
true.
guess I'm asking Mr. Reinhardt, how did it happen?
It was an individual summer camp, so we were not using school funds, so students were paying their own way.
Mhm.
So I did not believe that it needed to be approved by the board because they were paying their own way. And then the insurance piece came along at the last minute.
We actually had kids at a wrestling camp there at the same time that we had the football camp, and their paperwork was totally different. So I've been taking these games for 20 years. This is the first time that insurance, the group insurance has ever been asked for. So like I said, we had no clue until 6 days prior, and then we were all scrambling. I actually went to Kyle and thought, tried to get, separate insurance to, put it under our umbrella to cover the kids. And it was just totally new to all of us.
And I know, I don't remember if I put this when I notified the board of this, but if anything is tied to the district funds that we oversee, so because there was maybe a check that may have been written, or they're requesting our insurance, the set seg requires any group to follow the board policy, which in that case, even though the district from our financial accounts didn't write the check to the camp, but because it's dealing with our insurance, that's why their request was to make sure. The reason why I was asked to have them follow and complete the process, because God forbid something happens at the camp. Oftentimes if something happens, any legal stuff may not come out right away. Maybe, I'm not saying it did, but I'm just saying if it did. And that's why the first thing that's going to do is, did the board endorse it? Because then that would put us at a liability if we did not go through our board policy, which says overnight camps that basically are tied to the school in some fashion, whether financially or through our insurance, are to go through the board policy. So that's why it's coming back to you now, after the fact, and a request for you to approve it after the fact, because we want to make sure that it was, it at least covers from the insurance liability coverage aspect.
So this was the first time we went to Olivet, this camp. Did we go to any other football camps where there was insurance issue, anything like that?
First
Okay.
things is ever.
Okay.
I know the first year things can be hard because you're still figuring things out. I just thank you guys for looking for new experiences for our kids, and I know, this one kind of got a little confusing, but I'm sure in the future you guys are going to be,
We would have done it.
you'll know,
Yeah,
yeah.
we
you guys will know. So thank you for just keeping a look for new things for our kids. It sounds like it was a great opportunity, so thank you guys.
I have a quick question though. You mentioned about wrestling. So for wrestling, I know this isn't about wrestling, but just so for clarification purposes, if they need to come back to us again next year, would they have to? Because if they did it through their own 501c3 or not?
If they're doing it through their own 501c separate from the school district, it's not a school, and they're not requiring us, they can, that 501c can really, we don't have any jurisdiction over that 501c.
Okay, even though they're Richmond students, it doesn't, there's no connection?
Now, if the coaches are requiring them to go, now that's a different thing,
Gotcha.
because now an employee in the district is requiring them to do an activity.
So that's the difference,
That's
like when
the difference.
softball goes on
Correct.
that and wrestling, because
Okay.
it's part of being on the team
It's part
and
of
what
being
the
on the
team
team,
does.
it's part of what
Okay.
you do.
Okay.
A lot of times, like band camps will go away
Right.
to some school, that's all part of it.
That's the difference.
The difference, really the difference here is if they were able to get their own insurance policy,
Right.
we wouldn't be having this
Right.
conversation because it's their own entity on their own. But because they named the school district as a potential, what's the word I'm looking for? Mr. Insurer. Well, you're named on the policy.
Additional insured?
Additional insured
Yeah.
rider. That's why we became involved.
Okay.
And then next year, if they decide to go into this camp, they just wouldn't name us as the additionally insured?
Well,
No, it
this
sounds like
camp,
it'll
I
be the
understand,
same thing.
required.
Yeah, that's what it would.
It would be the same thing, because it's the
Gotcha.
same camp going to do.
Okay.
Okay, right.
Got it.
To be honest with you, and this is something Mr. Reinhardt and I are going to talk about, I would recommend any overnight you go through the process, because it adds another level of
Protection.
protection, because
For
if something
even
happened
the
to one of our
coaches.
employees, like Mr. Coker or Mr. Day,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they're acting as an agent of the school district. And if something happens, anybody's going to sue is going to go for someone who they appear to have the big pockets. They're going to go after us before they go after the individual. They'll name everybody, and they'll figure out who's going to be
One of the
best.
reasons why I was asking for the clarification, because I feel the same way, is that, you know, just come, we want great opportunities for all the kids anyway, so, you know, just as long as it's all done
And it was
properly.
awesome. We had 40 people that Foster Oil gave us their bus to go down there. I mean, it was a great experience.
Very cool. Thank you, guys. All right, next up, we have the 2019-20 Student Athletic Handbook, Mr. Reinhardt. And
I'm going to pass out, we are not taking any action on this tonight, but here is the handbook. I'll turn it over to Mr. Reinhardt for the 18-19. And this is the athletic, the next one actually be the student handbook, which encompasses all students.
I believe that we only have some minor changes. I think it was Mike Spiegel, and I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Walmsley, I don't think there were any other corrections that we made.
There was a question that was brought up, and I know, Mark, you had asked the question regarding eligibility. In discussion with the administrators and myself, as late as today even, the recommendation would be to keep the existing language regarding the 7 through 12 is your window of eligibility. And I can point that out if you want the section that there was a question regarding
It's on page 11.
page 11, yes, thank you. And,
So what was the question?
So why did that just get decided that we're going to keep it?
Just wanted to talk about what we talked about today, and the logic and the rationale.
I think that for students that it's a learning process, that if they make a mistake, that the process doesn't start over when they get to high school. So that it's a process all the way through their 5 years, their opportunity to go above and beyond athletically, was my rationale. I'm not sure if anyone else did. Brian, if you want to speak to it, that's the way I feel.
So if I do you think if I do something in 7th grade, it should follow me? That,
I believe so.
Okay.
I believe so.
okay. And then I think the question that came in, I am the one that started the conversation, but I think it's a fine line in this penalty where you're talking about a student that possibly could have done something, was not even allowed to be an athlete because of situation A. Situation B happens, and then we're going to come around for the next year, and we're still being penalized for situation B when we weren't able to be an athlete because of situation A. That's the problem that I have, that I brought to the board to talk about. And I guess I'm wondering, so we're not, if we've got a kid who's a 7th or 8th grader and they've violated the code of conduct, they are automatically unable to play that next season of sport. That's how we do it,
Yes.
with no exceptions.
I wouldn't say, in my experience, I have had any exceptions. I wouldn't say there would be absolutely no exceptions.
Okay, so,
Mr. Renner, just to interject, the way the policy is currently written, it's not that they can't play, it's that they have to serve a portion of 25%.
I know, I'm sorry, Andy, you're right. It's not that they can't play theirs, but I still think, and maybe I'm out of line, but I just still think it's along the lines of double jeopardy. If you've got a student that is not eligible to play a sport because of not following the code of conduct, whether it be grades or whatever it is. So they're not an athlete for an entire year. In that entire year, they get in trouble for something. Then comes the next school year, they serve their time, if you will, on this situation. They come back to be part, and they're penalized again, yet they hadn't been able to participate in a sport for a year. That's what I don't understand about this policy, this part of it.
In my opinion, I hold athletics and student athletes to a higher standard. I feel like it should be more difficult on them, and it should be held against them if they make poor choices, in my opinion.
I don't disagree with you. And we had quite a battle however many years ago when this policy first came about student athletes are treated at this level, regular students. We had much talk about why doesn't every student have to follow that criteria. I don't disagree with that. I'm just asking you, explain to me how it is if I'm not able to participate in the sport because of situation A. So I was not an athlete for an entire year. I had situation B happen, served my time, come back, and now I'm being penalized for that when I wasn't an athlete. Because it's 7 through 12, it follows me, but I was already penalized once for it. Why am I penalized again through this policy?
In your explanation, was that student athlete punished, or did they have consequences, not punished?
They weren't
Did they
able
have
to
consequences
participate in
thing?
they weren't the same thing.
Was it the same, were they receiving consequences for the same thing?
Were situations A and B the same? No, they were not. But explain to me why that mattered. I'm really struggling, Chris, with the fact that I'm already punished here, rightfully so, that I cannot participate, cannot be part of any of the sport, and I get in trouble, serve my time, I come back, and again, I'm penalized. I was not an athlete for that whole period, so how am I held accountable? I was an athlete before, but I was penalized for that.
Mrs. Telto, can I have from my point of view?
Sure.
Just from my point of view, if a student's ineligible for any reason, I think we still need to have this policy in place because I don't want a student who's ineligible for whatever reason it may be, academic or behavioral, to think that they now have a green light to behave in whatever manner they want and there's no repercussions for that. Because in that scenario, a student who's ineligible, they've got a green light in their heads, in their teenage mind, there's no repercussions for any actions they have while they're ineligible. That would be my thought.
And if you have a student who is a one-sport athlete, whether it's fall or winter, it could be a whole year before they play again. Where if you have a student that's 2 or 3, it's going to affect their next season that they're playing.
Do we have the same policies in place for National Honor Society or
No, because those aren't student athletes.
No, this is
No, I
only
get-
athletic code of conduct.
But that's because, I mean, they represent the school by playing for us, but doesn't a student who's in national honor society, shouldn't they be held to a higher standard as well?
That's a great question.
So why, like, I guess I would just say, why are we holding athletes to a different standard than maybe like
And
our
that's-
top 10? You know, our top 10 are probably on National Honor Society. They could get caught using and still represent us in the top 10.
But that's where the whole argument came, however many years ago this was, of why is it just student athletes that are held to the,
Right.
and it, you know, the conversation was they go out, the uniform, they represent all of that, and I believe in all of that. But then why isn't it academically the exact same thing?
At the middle school, National Junior Honor Society, student government, web, any extracurricular activity are held to the athletic code of conduct.
Oh, they are, okay. Now, when they sign, how often do they sign the athletic code of conduct? Is it?
Once a year.
So they sign, so if they, and then, you know, I'm thinking the medical world signatures are good for a year. Is that the same, does that signature expire on the year
Every
date?
school year, they sign the code of conduct.
So if they're ineligible to play for a year and they don't sign, how are we holding them to that standard? If they haven't signed because they were ineligible to play, we're basing it off of their signature of the code of conduct from the year prior when it's expired? So like Margaret's example, somebody in 7th grade, someone in 7th grade signs it, they're gonna start the season, fall comes, they sign it, they get in trouble. Maybe it's their third offense, so they're out for a calendar year. So they didn't sign that following fall because they were ineligible to play. We're holding them accountable, but they don't have a current agreement as a code of conduct.
I
know it kind of gets
The-
gray,
I
I'm just
understand what
sort
you're
of
saying,
devil's
but-
advocate, just playing it, you know?
Yeah.
We might be
The
holding
agreement
someone
is that
accountable.
it's not necessarily you agree to it, it's like our student code of conduct, that you are recognizing, acknowledging that it's out there.
Okay.
That these are the rules that our athletes follow. Now, if you don't sign or not, these are the rules that have been adopted by the board that
Okay.
athletes follow.
But if I'm not eligible to participate, I'm not an athlete.
What if I'm not, what if I haven't been an athlete and
Well,
I get
I
in trouble
would-
a few times? And then I want to become an athlete in my 9th grade year? Am I still held to that if I've never been an athlete?
No.
Like throughout middle school?
I would say no.
The answer
Okay.
would be no.
It's-
So it pretty much starts once you become an athlete,
Once
you are now
become an
held to
athlete,
that
this
standard.
becomes the standard
Okay.
for you.
What system do we have? You know, say you get in trouble in 7th grade, you don't come out for something again until 10th grade. How do we keep track of it? It's 2 different buildings.
Our school.
So
But
we,
if you weren't an
so
athlete, you
we
wouldn't be
search,
held accountable.
if I'm a 10th grader and I decide I'm gonna play football, and I did something in 7th grade, you or the coach or whoever goes into power school to make sure that's part of our process? Okay.
But if you weren't an athlete, it doesn't count. Any of that stuff isn't invisible, so to speak.
You don't
Okay.
see that very
But if you're not,
often.
but Kyle asked if I did something in 7th grade, but I don't play a sport until 10th grade.
But he's saying that doesn't count, none of that stuff.
No, I'm saying you were an athlete in
Athlete in
7th grade.
seventh grade.
You took 3 years off, in 10th grade you go out for something, but you did something back in 7th grade.
But then,
How do we
as
keep
long
track
as
of
it
it?
was your first offense, you'd only still have to forfeit 25%. So
Right,
really
still
what we're
punishment.
talking
Of the
about
next
here is
season,
you have
though,
to
so it could be the next grade season.
I would hope
really
so.
lose.
I would hope so.
The original, a couple of years ago, that first offense was, I believe, a semester.
It was a semester.
You lost a semester.
Can I ask how often does this come up? I mean, do we see this a lot where kids are hitting that third and fourth offense?
I've never seen anyone hit the 3rd or 4th offense, first or second.
That's-
Was there any thought to just making it 7th and 8th and then high school?
We did actually had that conversation as a,
I think it's, I do something in 7th grade and then I don't play a sport again until 10th and I'm held accountable for what I did as a 7th grader, I think is ridiculous. I would hope as a 7th grader, I'm different as a 10th grader. I don't know.
I get the
I
idea
think
behind
that's,
it. I do. I understand the idea behind it because you are holding kids accountable. I also understand though that the 7th grade mind and the 10th grade, your priorities
Yeah,
are
that-
completely different.
exactly.
You can be so much more easily swayed by peers in 7th grade maybe than 10th. You're just coming into your own. You're not really thinking for yourself. There's a lot of peer pressure going on and you're still kind of navigating through middle school. I feel like it's a hard sell, but I understand the concept of it. It's just thinking of that adolescent mind. I think there's a huge developmental difference between 7th grade and 10th grade.
And we want to keep our kids in athletics or academic events and things like that, and I wouldn't want to dissuade someone from doing that. I guess if they're on the straight and narrow, it wouldn't matter really, when you think
They're
about
being
it.
popular.
Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen very often that if a student athlete plays in 7th grade, they skip. Most of them will play unless they know academically they're unable to, or they just choose not to.
Any other questions, Mr. Reinhardt? Okay, thank you. All right, next up, we have the 2018-20 Student Parent Handbook. Mr. Lawson.
Okay, this is going to take a little bit longer, just because I want to go through the pages. This one is, and I'll just point out on page numbers if you want to follow along once everybody gets. Page 2 is this title changes, people. This did not come back to the board for a revision other than the date change last year. So it's almost been really 2 years since we've looked at this. The next adjustment is going to be on page 12, which is the meal charging. My first year here, we allowed students to, and the policy was that they could go up to $25, and we wanted to make sure no child did not have was refused a breakfast or a lunch. We have a growing portion of our student population that has exceeded $25 in arrears for their lunch program. We send out automated calls every Thursday. We do letters to families. It carries over each year, so the balance doesn't wipe out, so it comes over the next year. Where these, I would say a good chunk of them get paid up is right before graduation, because in order to graduate, you have to have all your debts paid up to the district. So the recommendation would be is we don't allow students to go beyond 25, which is about 8 meals, almost 2 weeks, and we give them an alternative, because it is starting to cost us, and I put it in the newsletter, and the last one was I think December to June. It's sometimes up to $4,000 district-wide that we have negative balances. And ultimately, the general fund has to move money into the food service to clear up those negative balances, because the food service can't, by federal law, cannot absorb negative balances. So we have to do a transfer in at some point. We've been creative. We've had some families that struggled with this, and so we've used outside sources to help pay bills in the past. I know some staff members knowing situations, but we have some students that are not, at least I'm not aware, that there is an environment at home where finances are tough. Now, it could be. Some people put on a good facade because it's a lot of pride issues. But we have some students that our balances are a lot.
We have, in high school, we have probably half a dozen students who are in excess of $200. We had several students near the end of the year last year that were north of $300.
Now, food service is not cost to the district, so this is one thing that created an alternate program for them to not allow them to go beyond 25 to try to minimize that cost.
So what is the alternate, breakfast or lunch?
I'd have to get with Mr. Estrada to figure out what legally we can give them. We wouldn't be able to count for a meal reimbursement. It would be something to tide them over. And I know this was, like I said, when I first got here, an issue that we addressed, and we committed to not letting kids go without. This, I think, we would still not let them go without, but it wouldn't be the same. There's some, for those, there may be some pride issues, I think, maybe we have to address, and those are some of the conversations. Sometimes it's not the fault of the student, obviously, but each year it's getting larger and larger. When we first implemented the policy, I think we were down to, well, I think at most we were around the 500, we cleared that up. we're now in the $4,000 range.
Now, currently, we offer free lunch for the summer program, correct?
Correct,
Are there-
that's a federal program that they qualify to bridge that gap between the school lunch programs.
Are there any, during school time, any incentives in that way to?
We pushed the free reduced lunch applications for them to fill out. I believe, looking at the list from memory, they don't qualify. They're on that border. They don't qualify for a reduce. There is a couple on that list, off the top of my head, that we really have to work with the parent to get them to do it in order, they would qualify, but we gotta get the parent to fill out the application. And the free and reduced lunch application is the domino effect for everything else. Our Title I funding for this coming school year is based on our free reduced lunch count from last year. So even though they're not really putting more money in the pie, we can get a bigger share of the pie if we have larger free reduced lunch. There's a domino effect of that because then you have other subgroups it creates for the state assessment, so it's a fine line.
So we're still, by implementing this, we're still not letting kids go hungry. They're just getting an alternative lunch.
Right now, what we're doing is giving them the same lunch. I have to sit down with Mr. Estrada and say, okay, what is the alternative lunch that we're going to give them? So they still are getting some type of food, but it's minimizing our costs and not allowing them to continue going to the rears.
As long as we're giving them something, I mean, I just don't want to see us turn it down.
The next section is on page 20. This is 20 and 21. This is regarding the cafeteria. There was a policy that says if students are wearing jackets, they won't be served. The reality is we have students who wear jackets because either they may be coming from AIS in the morning, they may be getting on the bus and going to another program. It may be minus 20 degrees, and even though it's technically in the 68, 70, there's still a chill in that cafeteria. So our option was we're not going to refuse kids because they have a jacket on, type of thing. 8 talks about a closed campus. Currently, we instituted this policy, I think Ms. Castle and Ms. Borg started it this year, regarding we don't allow outside food to be brought in. If we do have parents who will sign their student out, they go eat something and come back. They aren't allowed to bring that stuff back just because we don't know what's in that drink or food. The next section on page 25, this was actually a duplicate in here. It's written in another part, which I'll point out in a minute. Page 27 talks about progress reports. Student progress reports, we are trying to get parents to utilize Power School and the parent portal. You can get access anytime, particularly with the grades 4 through 12. But if parents need a paper copy, they can request a paper. We'll still give them a progress report every 5 weeks. But our goal is not to print progress reports, but to get people to use the parent portal on a more regular basis so they're monitoring their child's progress and not just waiting for that 5-week mark. But we know we will probably have some families that we're going to have to make sure we are working with them.
What's the percentage of parents that do the parent portal, do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I can get that, how many are signed up.
And
There is a
we
difference in
sign
how
them
many are
up
signed
how?
up and how many are using it.
Right, how do we sign them up?
When they register, we give them that information when they register. It's in the welcome back packets that are sent out every year. Ms. Daly, I know, has sat with parents and actually had them sign up right in her office. This is why we put the computers in there for a couple of families. But I can check them.
Are parents in the elementary, do they have access to the Power School?
We are moving the elementary too, so they can see but it's an education first with the staff on how they're reporting in the grade book before we open it up to parents to make sure. Because we don't want to create more anxiety on a parent if something doesn't appear right, and it could have been a learning curve for the staff,
Right.
which is how it's entered. Much like we did with the middle school, we did standards-based, there was a learning process at the beginning, so. On page 28, just clarify grades for in terms of the 4th grade now at the middle school. If someone has academic misconduct, we added some, it could force them to forfeit an opportunity if they cheated on, let's say, a summative test. It may result in them not being able to retake that test because of academic misconduct. It's not a black and white. That's why the word's may. There to leave some discretion up to the building to see what's the situation. Page 30 clarifies the practice of making sure all outstanding fees are paid prior to graduation. It's a practice we have. It's not really in writing anywhere, so we want to make sure it's clarified. Page 31 just clarifies grades for elementary, for the academic education achievement, honor roll, et cetera, and the middle school now is 4 through 8. 32 talks about a student still can be on honor roll if they have no more than 2 needs improvements. You know, the example is if someone gets those at the beginning of the year, but they've shown significant growth, we don't want to penalize them because they've changed the behavior. They've done what we're trying to work with them. 32 is a title change. 33, we just never put the color of the cord in there, so we clarified that. 37 talks about dances. There was a lot of discussion on this one. We're recommending that a dance is more of the social event, and for some students, this could be their only opportunity to participate, so taking that you have to be passing all the credits out, that, you know, we're encouraging all students to be part of this, this is at the high school, the dances. It adds in there that if someone does have a formal offense, they aren't allowed to participate unless they've completed the restorative practice that's designated by the superintendent, or excuse me, or the superintendent or designee, which is the building principal, whoever. Refunds, there was a whole issue on refunds and so forth. Basically, if you pay and you become ineligible for one of these reasons why you can't go to the dance or are ejected from the dance because of some behavior, there's no refund. Page 40, there's quite a few on page 40. As a county, all the school districts are moving to a unified attendance code system, which is being rolled out in every district this year. So this defines what codes there are. We do not excuse absences. We have unverified if we don't hear from the parents, verified if we hear from the parents, and documented absence if we receive some type of documentation, doctors know, or so forth. There's 2 types of tardies. The student is tardy on their own case, they just were late for class, or maybe a teacher, the test ran over and the students were completing it and the teacher's excusing them to go to the next class. That's the documented. School business is anything that students go to that are part of the school. It could be field trips. It could be sometimes our athletes have to leave early to attend an event that's a away game. It doesn't penalize them on their absence. It's considered school business. Parent withdraw is anytime a parent comes in and withdraws their child early from school. Homebound instruction is similar. There's a reason why the student can't come to school. There's a documented medical condition, and we deal with those on a case-by-case. You have in-house suspension, and you got at-home suspension. Youth home, which I don't believe we've had anybody dealing with recently. And then graduates is the code that once seniors graduate, the days school is still in session, until last we have to code them. This is in helping with the county truancy offers have a consistent code. I was part of the committee, and I had Mr. Koshin come to one of our meetings to represent the elementary. It's amazing how many districts are different among the buildings within the districts and how different we were. So as an effort to try to create some unification, so when you see students moving in and out of district, there's a common code system. The last code is Michigan Virtual. We really don't have any students that qualify for this, and every once in a while we may have a student that, based on the schedules of dual enrollment, may be doing an online class where they don't have to report into class as defined by the pupil accounting manual. The other stuff is just clarifying the absences, whether verified, documented. Vacations do count towards the total absences. I'm on to page 42. It just cleans up the language between, again, we don't excuse or unexcuse. We are only verifying, yes, a parent called, no, a parent did not call, or we got a doctor's note. In our training with the administrators and secretaries, which I believe is next Wednesday, we'll talk about how to document this in PowerSchool, just to remind everybody. The next section is page 46, talks about informal offenses, and it just reiterates the law regarding before we issue discipline, restorative justice practices are going to be considered. Our goal is to change behavior. Page 50, adjust the suspension based on the new law. 10 days or less is considered a short-term suspension. 10 days but less than 60 days, which is up to my discretion. At that point, it's considered long-term, and anything over 60 days is considered expulsion by law, which would come to the board for that situation. We added a step 6, which would be if a student has been out 10 days and they have another offense, then it's my decision whether I extend the progressive days, or it's my recommendation to bring to you guys that it would be a longer suspension or expulsion. Page 50 talks about what written notice, when we will give, and this was a recommendation through our attorney, that to make sure that when we give written notice, it really has 3 pieces because of the due process that a student has to appeal. What is the charge? What's the reason for the suspension? How long is the suspension? And then we will provide that parent that notice within 24 hours, that written documentation. Sometimes just when the incident happens, you're not able to do it that day at the end of the day or by the particular 6 hour, and it becomes very challenging. If there is a situation where a student needs to be suspended pending investigation, we will indicate that as well as the possible length of that suspension while that investigation is ongoing. Page 52 talks about in order to participate in afternoon and evening activities that occur, you have to at least, before it was a full day of school, you have to at least attend a half day of school. Based on the pupil accounting rules, as long as the student attends school, it's counted as a day of instruction. I see the biggest one that we're going to probably would be prom. Make sure you have to attend prom prior to getting your nails done if your prom's on a Friday night. Or getting your tuxedo. I don't want to be sexy, sorry. Get your haircut. Page 54, under the use of tobaccos, we added, based on our experience this past school year, vaping, e-cigarettes, or similar devices. Page 57 talks about electronic communication devices. We added that in the middle schools always had the practice they need to be stored in their locker, but 4th grades do not have lockers, so that's why we added or stored in the backpacks in the classroom cubbies. And then before and after school, they should be stored in their back pocket, just for the sake of, we don't want anything to happen to them and so forth. And then the last one, I think that's it.
Brian, on the athletic one, there's a place for parents and the students to sign. Does that not happen on this one?
We do that at the, it's in the welcome back packet.
So it's a separate,
It's a
separate sheet of paper, okay.
Any questions? Moving on, we have your name requirement.
Okay. This is a relatively, I don't want to say new phenomenon for a school district, because the legislators passed laws that somewhat contradict each other. All the laws that regulate schools are under the Michigan Revised School Code. And oftentimes within that there are conflicting. So in 2017, the Michigan legislators enacted section 164H of the school aid, which basically said there is a 5% state aid penalty, and we have a state aid penalty if a collective bargaining agreement does not conform to the requirements of this section. So if we don't have a collective bargaining that has language in there that has for merit pay, which is required by law, we lose 5% of our state aid now. That's a lot of money for our
Yeah, it
district,
is.
for any district. There's another law, or Governor Snyder, shortly after this law passed, at the time in 2018, said that the Michigan Department of Education, which oversees this law, is not going to enforce this law. So it's whoever the governor is given the direction of the department whether they're going to make this a priority to enforce or not. On the other hand, the legislators have also passed other laws, again, 164, that basically says you are required to have merit pay. There is a very obscure law, which basically it's section 1804, and our attorney has not, his experience, ever seen this one implemented, but it is on the books, that says it is a misdemeanor for any school official to fail to perform the mandates of the school revised code. So basically what it's saying is, for me as a superintendent, if I do not follow the law, I could be charged with a misdemeanor based on this. So in speaking with our attorney, his recommendation is that we establish a resolution and pass a resolution that we are going to institute merit pay, and that as long as it's required by the law, that we're going to implement this. And I'll show you kind of an example of some of the things we've previously talked about, so that we can implement based on a teacher's evaluation, issuing them a merit pay or an administrator's evaluation. These are really the only two groups that are fall under the Teacher Tenure Act, which is what these laws 1250 is regulated. So we're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. Is you have to have it, but the previous governor saying they're not enforcing it. But if someone comes and says they're enforcing it and we don't have it, people could be charged with a misdemeanor. So again, our attorney said he has not seen that, but it's on the books. So my wife would probably like to see me away from the house sometimes. I don't think she wants me in jail.
Right.
And I don't want to be in jail. So what I'm proposing is the resolution that is before you tonight is one from our attorney. It talks about the language of the law. And it basically says, insofar as it's required by law, we will institute this resolution and merit pay. So there we go. So this is I'm going to increase it here so we can see it. Let's go 200. That's a little too big. Let's try this. That's a little too small. Give me a second. Let's go here. So for the math people out there, it's a formula. Basically, X equals how many teachers and administrators we had that were considered effective by their evaluation. Y equals how many teachers, A does, I'm sorry. B equals how many teachers were highly effective administrators and teachers. C equals the amount the board is going to designate in the budget. So in the upcoming budget amendment, we would actually do a line item saying we're going to designate X dollars to merit pay. And X is the calculation for effective teachers, what they would receive, and Y is the calculation for highly effective, which is basically 4 times what an effective teacher gets. So if you put in a dollar value, in this particular case, I just put $10,000. And in this example, you see there are 56 administrators and teachers that are considered effective, and 34 administrators and teachers that are considered highly effective. An effective teacher, administrator, would get of that $10,000 a check for $52.08. A highly effective will get a check for $208.13. If you change the dollar value, whatever you want to allocate, if you want to put $20,000, it automatically recalculates it based on a formula of 4 times what an effective. Now, one of the things that we'll have to establish is what is the rate that we want to establish. But the resolution is saying we're going to establish merit pay, and we're going to come up with the guidelines, which would be the administrative guideline of how we're going to distribute that merit pay. This was just an example of 4 times it. It could be 2 times it, and I just redo the calculation.
And then it's each year
Each
that
year
happens,
based on their
correct?
final evaluation. So, for
I
instance.
mean, each year into the budget, you pick
You
a
pick
dollar.
a
It
dollar.
doesn't have to be the same dollar figure, it can be higher or lower as you go along.
Some districts, for the sake of compliance with the law, and it's not really the spirit of the law, but just give everybody $1. There are districts that, one in the UP, that gets, if you have an effective evaluation, you get a gift card to the local coffee shop. That's not the spirit of the law, I mean, the intent of the law, but there is an incentive based on your final evaluation. So like I said, what's before you tonight is the recommendation to approve a resolution. Identifies 1250 of the revised school code, and it's recognized the board wants to be in compliance with the law, and that it says the board shall annually allocate funds in each contract year to be characterized as merit pay based on your budget that you approve. You can set that dollar amount wherever you want. And that resolution, we would put on the website to show this is how we're complying with the state law.
So by passing the resolution now, by February, we decide what that dollar figure is going to be. We amend the budget in February, so it goes into effect June of 2020, this school year's evaluations
This
coming
school
up.
year is correct. So at the end of this year, when all the evaluations are turned in by the administrators, and I do the administrator's evaluation, we would look at, okay, how many effective, how many ineffective.
Mhm.
This doesn't have any merit pay, though we don't currently have anybody in the minimally or ineffective categories. But if we did, that group would not receive any merit pay.
Right.
It's only for effective and higher.
And then going to do the budget for 2021, that conversation then talks about what would that dollar figure be for the next year. So each
Correct.
budget talk.
But it puts us in compliance with 1250 law, that we do have a way of giving merit pay, and that the board's budget annually puts that to set a dollar amount. And like I said, if for some reason we have a turn from the state, you could reduce that, you could increase that, whatever the financial ability of the district at the time. This is outside of anything collective bargaining has been negotiated.
Any other questions for Brian? It's Brian. Next, we have public comment, a portion of our meeting where people in the audience can come and address the board. You have 3 minutes to speak. It's not a question and answer period. You can leave your name and phone number if you would like a return phone call back. Is there anyone who would like to address the board?
For those who don't know me, I'm Robert Hamblin. Recently retired school teacher at Richmond TV schools. I own and operate a driver education business here in the community now for 18 years. I work with Ed Delore, who's also like a co-teacher, and he's 26 years of experience. I have 31 years of experience in Michigan teaching. I provide a service for students. I don't think of it as a for-profit business, which is how it's defined here. I think I work well with administration, present and previous. I've never had any issues with students or parents, nothing that we couldn't resolve. I pay my rent on time. I've never had any scheduling issues. I never had an accident. And I don't know of any teacher in the county that can say that they've never had an accident. No Richmond student has ever been in an accident in my cars. And neither has Mr. Delore. So I think we do a pretty good job. And in light of everything that happened, and everything is over and done with. I'm down in weight, down in blood pressure, down in blood sugar. I feel great. And I see no reason why I cannot continue with your permission to continue operating the service that I provide, that I think is convenient for students and is fair. And like I said, I'm here because of the email I received from Mr. Longtable, and with an idea of maybe not allowing me to come back in. I'm asking again for your permission tonight, and I need to know something soon because I'll have to make some other plans. I'm here tonight with my beautiful wife, Jill, and there might be a couple of characters over there that I had in the car a few times in the past, so they can tell you how I do the job. I do offer day one ride-arounds for anyone who would like to join us. You can sit in the back seat and maybe listen to some of the teaching cues and things that I do, that I think I do well and nobody does as good as me. And I think it's the coaching and teaching cues that maybe sets me apart from some of the other people that operate the same business. So I would appreciate your consideration of this matter, and then we can move forward. And then if I can just pile on one thing, the camp. When I taught, can I say the name of the school?
Sure.
The AA school, Plymouth Canton, 16 years of losing streak. When we went to that very camp, it's one of the reasons why we turned that program around. So I know the value of that camp, having triple day practices and bonding and eating together and sleeping together, and playing early rap music together. And we just had a great time. And without that camp, those kids probably don't continue winning like they have. And I think it's a good thing when I found out the guys were doing that. I think that's a good move. So anyway, coming from, like I said, a class AA school where we would have 60 or 80 kids at camp, and it was a wonderful thing. So anyway, do you have any questions for me?
Did you leave your phone number? Okay.
No, I did not.
Okay. Do you have a pen?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, if you could, please. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, is there anybody else who would like to address the board? All right. Moving on, we have superintendent and legislative update, Mr. Walmsley.
Okay, for those of you who missed the budget process last year, I am happy to report as we start this new school year that this is the second year in a row we have now passed the budget where we do not have the structural problems. So thank you, Board of Education, for looking for the best interest of our students and staff and staying within our means. It's exciting to know that we have demonstrated that fiscal responsibility. 5 years ago, the board that was up here inherited almost a $400,000 structural problem. And so each year, working as a team with not only the board, but also the administrators and teachers and looking at ideas, we've been able to eliminate that. We've added programs over the last year. We haven't cut programs. We've added STEM programs, green clubs, culinary arts, cybersecurity, television production, emergency medical technician. We've added additional advanced placement courses, an SAT course at the high school, guitar, dance. In addition, this is our second year. We've added a summer breakfast program, and lunch program. We've done a lot. And I say this because even as the board has demonstrated significant financial responsibility as your role that the taxpayers put you here for, the state has not. As of today, the state legislature has not approved a budget, nor has the governor signed into law a state budget for this current school year, which begins, or this current fiscal year, which begins October 1st. We are almost 1/6 of the way into our school budget where we've has expenses, but we don't even know yet what we're getting from the state. The FY20 budget that was approved by this board had some very conservative assumptions, both enrollment, that would be drastically different if we had a state budget. I have met with legislators that represent Richmond, recently at the Village Cafe with Representative Yarge. We have met often. Conversation is that there has been conversations over the summer between the leaders of our House and Senate and Governor, but the legislators are not scheduled to officially be back in session until August 26th. approximately 34 days before the state is set to run out of, if you will, money, because their budget ends. There is conversations, and I will expect the news reports to begin reporting that the government offices are going to start putting out information regarding a government shutdown at the state due to contractual obligations. They have to notify employees 30 days prior to when they're going to be furloughed. So you can expect that if there's not a state budget, and if they're not coming back till August 26th, and you got Labor Day in there, that more than likely that will be my prediction, as well as many others, that you will start hearing about a state shutdown beginning October 1st. I would strongly encourage everybody listening and sitting here to contact your legislators, our legislators, and urge them to improve the budget that invests in schools and does not take the school aid fund, which is being proposed, to fix the roads. This district, as well as many others, have experienced significant cost reductions, $470 per pupil in the mid-year, minimal increases to no increases oftentimes that do not even take into consideration with inflation. When you look at inflation, we are just at the level of funding, when you take inflation into consideration, as we were in 2009, 10 years later. Now, again, I compliment this board and the previous boards that sat here because the decisions have not been easy. But you've been able to stay focused on students, and I hope our community realizes the fiscal challenges we've been faced to maintain our schools. There is actually a plan out there to bond, refinance the public school employee pension to extend the debt, which, as you remember in our budgets, we have that liability of millions of dollars of debt liability on our books. But extend that budget and add billions of dollars more in state debt by bonding the public school pension fund, public school employee pension fund. They're not talking about police, fire, or government workers. They are only talking about public school pension funds. If you just look at the process that goes through bankruptcy, and when something goes through bankruptcy, pension funds get affected. And if you're trying to create a system that is anti-public schools, what better way than to bankrupt the system? Gambling on public school employees' pension funds is not the way to fix the roads or balance the budget. This is the same thing when they specifically attacked public school employees, when the governor and legislature took 3% of public school employees' check, which was found unconstitutional, and it took years to get that refunded back. They didn't take anybody else's, they took public school employees. If schools are to significantly improve, the state has to invest in public education. I ask again, the legislators, you've heard on the news, they're still in session. They're still working. And we need to call them and tell them to invest in public schools and not fix the state's problems on the backs of our public schools. I wish I had legislation news to report, but we don't. I think as a board, it was very smart and wise of you to approve a budget that has no increase and be able to staff our buildings and maintain our programs. We tighten our belt again, but there are many districts in the county that are assuming increases. And here we are almost to October 1st, and we don't know what our budget's going to be. A couple things in the district. That's all I have for legislature. That's my soapbox speech. But if you don't know your legislators' contact, go to the website. We got their numbers. Call me. I will get you in contact with them. I meet with them regularly. We actually have another meeting in about 2 weeks. The message I'm getting is they are preparing for a shutdown to see who's going to blink between the parties. And who's left in the middle for the people in this room and the students that we service. And I thank God every day that we have a staff that is 100% devoted to our kids in this district. And we will figure it out behind the scenes, but they're committed to our students. Welcome back addresses are coming up on Monday, August 26th at our next board meeting. Night, we have we'll do the state of the district and a welcome back address to all staff in the auditorium. the board, you are more than welcome, and you'll get an invite to that at 8 o'clock. We have a continental breakfast in the morning prior to that. We'll have a good day to see all our staff together in one location. So if you can be there, again, it's 8 o'clock on August 26th. Welcome back letters to families will be mailed out next week with general information about the school year as well as specific upcoming Blue Devil days. Speaking of Blue Devil days, high school Blue Devil days, we're doing a little different because of one of the action items that's on the board. I want to be able to address staff, but the high school Blue Devil days is at 5 o'clock on August 26th for grades 9 and 12 and 6:30 for grades 10 and 11. Richmond Middle School will follow their Blue Devil days the next day, August 27th, Tuesday. 5 o'clock will be 4th and 5th grade. 6:30 will be 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. Will L. Lee will have their Blue Devil days on the Wednesday, the 28th at 5 o'clock for kindergarten and 3rd and 6:30 for 1st and 2nd. And finally, the Early Childhood Center will be the day before they begin, which is different this year, which will be Tuesday, September 3rd at 5 o'clock for the preschool programs. The first day of school for all students is coming up, September 3rd. The first day of school for preschool programs is September 4th, Wednesday. Good Old Days Parade is on Sunday, September 8th. We have a spot in the parade, so the invite will go out to all the staff to again walk with the board and myself and the administrators in that Good Old Days Parade to showcase the solidarity in our school district. Just a quick reminder, our board meeting next time, if you recall, the meetings that were the schedule that was approved in January is at Lee Elementary School at 7 o'clock. It will not be here due to high school open house, or Blue Devil Days, I think. And just a couple updates for the board. If you recall the bus accident that happened at the end of last school year, or in last school year, the settlement finally has come through, taken several months. We received a settlement check based on the age of the bus for $55,000. We will have to order a new bus, which is approximately $95,000. So there will be an expense in the budget amendment of approximately $40,000 to accommodate that bus purchase. But we're going to need to, it takes time for that bus to get here. So I believe October 1st is when the bids go out, the statewide bids, so we can pick a bus off that October 1st deadline. And with that, that's all I have.
Thanks, Brian. Next is items of interest from members of the board. Anybody would like to say anything tonight?
I just want to say, I didn't say it earlier and got past me, but it's really exciting when we hire new people and that we get people that come back, that are Richmond grads that come back and work for us. And on the list, I don't know everybody on the list, but there were 4 of them. Cheyenne LeGroy is a graduate. Carrie Blissett, I was going to call her Carrie Raska at the elementary. And I worked with her years ago. She is going to be a tremendous asset. She comes with great experience, but she's a Richmond grad. And Sean Misko and Preston, who we're all very excited that Preston is finally full-blown one of us. It's exciting, but it's just really cool when kids and a little bit older kids come back and work for us and give back what hopefully they got from us. So thank you. And Mr. Berg, you're there, but I think I talked about you last meeting, so, because we approved him last meeting, didn't we? Yeah, so, but he's over there too. I'm gonna work at the high school, but it's just really, really exciting, and we're glad that you guys are part of the team. And I just wanna throw out Haley Fortuna's in the audience. All hail Haley, our former board rep. We love her, she's doing great. Going to school in California, we're so proud of her, and we know she's going to be amazing. So it's so good to see her face too. That's it.
Anybody else? Okay. Moving on, we have some action items. First up, approval of the ballot language for November 6, 2019 proposal.
This has been a long, ongoing process. In July, the state treasurer reviewed our application that was submitted and approved it without any corrections that we had to make. Before you is a resolution that has to be filed by 4 p.m. tomorrow if you want to get it on the November ballot. A resolution to put on the ballot a bond vote for $38.7 million it touches every part of this district in terms of needed repairs and improvements and so forth. So my recommendation is for the board to approve the ballot language and allow me to finalize it with the elections office tomorrow morning.
Sample resolution?
Do we have to read the whole thing?
You don't have to read the whole thing. You can, some boards want to, so it was given as there. So
Can I make a motion to approve the resolution that pertains to the November 5th, 2019 bond proposal for $38,710,000
Support.
as provided to us?
attached document.
Okay, there you go, attached documentation.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. Any discussion? I'm going to do a roll call vote. Margaret?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Sherry? Aye. Kyle?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Angela?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion passes.
President Gill, can I have,
Yes.
before we start, now that the board has passed this, there is a series of events that will now unfold. There is a public news release, which I passed out, which will go to the newspapers. It will be now put on our website. We are in the process of finalizing the website page, which should be there, ready to go tomorrow. So much like we did with the fourth grade move, we have a page designated just for the bond. We have lined up this really is a informational campaign. It's a two-tiered focus. One is prior to September 21st, which is the day absentee ballots have to be mailed. So we have, and I'll be sending around to all staff as well as the board, when the township and county or city meetings are, trying to get them before to at least use that public vehicle in terms of the video coverage to get it out there. We are doing, for Blue Devil Days, the week before, we will do what's called a Red Square campaign. Anything and everything that's part of this bond will have a red square. In the lobbies of every building are display boards that have, here's the scope of the bond, what is included. So when parents visually walk in and see the building with a bunch of orange squares over it, they can see this is the magnitude of the bond. We have, because of the absentee voters, we are the week of September 16th, we will be running senior citizens luncheons to bring people in to talk about the bond, give them information about the school district, but also give them factual information. We'll also be running 2 dinners that week, which we have a mailing list, that will go out to them, invite them to the session. We will be talking at each of the Blue Devils days. We have a booth set up for the good old days locked in to do an informational booth there. So I'll be reaching out to the staff to staff it, to be able to pass out and distribute literature, factual information. And there's a whole host. We have dates that are lined up to talk at churches and local churches. I'll be looking for staff members that are members of those churches to be the invite to get out there. We have a PowerPoint, it was finalized today with all the information. In essence, there are 4 basic factors of this bond as we look at the scope. It's facility improvements and updates, student safety and enhancements, improving the learning environment, and improvement to athletic facilities. Those are the 4, if you will, pillars of this bond that everything falls under. With that, and forgive me, I don't know which board member asked you this question, but what can we say and what can't we say? In your packet, I wanted to make sure you had a printed copy so everybody has it. This is a Q&A document from the attorney, because as an employee of the district, we can only give factual information. We cannot ask people to say, vote yes or vote no. As a board member, sometimes you're in a little different role. And kind of the if you will, the Cliff Notes version is, if you are acting as an agent at that event, you're there specifically because you are a board member, you can give information. If you are acting as a public citizen, you're there watching, and I guess maybe a play might be an example, you're watching a play, you're not there as a board member, you just went to enjoy the play. You can talk about advocating for one way or the other. One of the examples we talked about is if I'm a teacher and I'm running, or a coach, let's use a coach example. While they're acting as a capacity of a coach, they cannot advocate for the bond. Beyond that, after hours, in the evenings, on their own personal emails, you can advocate however you want on the bond. If you are going to advocate one way or the other on your personal time, you need to make sure, and this will be talked about with staff members, there is no district resources used, not even to use a district computer to log into your personal email to send it. Absolutely no copying on the copier. The attorney goes so far, and the gentleman we met with today and said, don't even use a district pen, bring your own pen. Because anything that uses district resources and advocates is a violation of the law. I read this, and I jokingly said to the administrators, if you have a hard time sleeping, this would be a good thing to read, because some of it's legalese, but it does give you a lot of good information too on what you can and can't do. And this will be communicated not only with staff, what their role are, especially when they're talking to parents, particularly maybe at Blue Devil Days or at a parent-teacher conference. They just have to be cautious on what role they're in at that moment. But on their personal time, they are free to do whatever they want to do. Okay. So I will be providing more information, asking for people to sign up for, the informational campaigns. We're going to go out to the townships and cities, looking for people to come with me. I would like to teachers, secretaries, paralegals, everybody involved in some fashion. My challenge to the staff on the 26th is going to be commit to one event that you can help spread the informational campaign about this district. Whether it's knocking door to door, which we'll be doing, we're targeting 2 phases. One is before the absentee ballot and one is after. Whether it's going to a city council meeting or a township meeting and talking it during public comment, which I will be giving. If people need a script, because there's a lot of times people are nervous, we have a script that gives you that 3-minute conversation you can have. So this now becomes the official launch now that you have approved to put this on the ballot. So I appreciate the board's investment, and I know the community will be, I hope, very supportive of us.
Thank you, Brian. All right, next up we have approval of the asbestos abatement.
Okay, after our last board meeting in June, I keep wanting to say December, I don't know why, but in June, as we were renovating the school store, we were pulling up the carpet and there was asbestos tiles. So there is a board policy that authorizes the superintendent to make an emergency purchase. I got received 3 bids for asbestos abatement removal. We went with the lowest bid. They did an outstanding job. It's done. The policy says I need to bring this back to the next board meeting, which is today, for an official approval, because it is over $10,000. We did have to contract with Nova Environmental, because while they're abating, they're monitoring the air quality in the building to make sure nothing gets in the unit vents, et cetera. And I would encourage anybody after the board meeting, if you want to take a peek at it's come along, it's almost finished. It really looks nice, that school store. It really looks nice. So, and the classrooms that are attached to it that will provide a great opportunity for learning. And one last thing, the reason why it is a little bit higher than the bid is because there were some samples that had to be done, and I don't have the final bill for those. They had to take more samples than, it's not going to be that high. But I just wanted to make sure I didn't hold up a payment. We need to pay that bill.
A motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the asbestos abatement contract with Qualified Abatement Services, Inc. and Nova Environmental for a total not to exceed $17,000, for which funding from the 1920 general fund is authorized.
Support.
All right, is there any discussion? Okay, Kyle?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Sherry? Aye. Jessica?
Aye.
Margaret?
Aye.
Angela?
Aye.
I vote aye, motion passes. Next up, approval for the overnight football camp.
Just to recap, that 70 salary you just approved will appear on the budget amendment because it wasn't in the original budget, so we will work on adjusting. I do not have a resolution sheet, so I'm asking that the board approve the overnight trip that was presented tonight for the camp to Olivet College, varsity football camp at Olivet College.
I make a motion to approve the varsity football camp that has already taken place on 7/29 to 7/31 to Olivet College.
Support.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, next up, approval of merit pay resolution.
I motion to accept the recommendation of the superintendent and approve the attached merit pay resolution.
Support. Any discussion? Okay, Margaret?
Aye.
Sharon? Aye. Angela?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Kyle?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion passes. And
I'm going to make a motion to table item E, board action on student 032519-A to our next meeting, which is August 26, 2019.
Support.
okay, any discussion? Margaret?
Aye.
Kyle?
Aye.
Angela?
Aye.
Jessica?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Sharon? Aye. I vote aye. Motion passes. We are adjourned.